Thrill Seekers. That song was one of my own, and it's provisionally titled I Can Always See Right Through You. And the story is I was in Amoeba Music, the big record store in Hollywood, and I kept thinking of this song in my mind, and I couldn't get it out of my head, and it wasn't something that was playing over on the speakers or anything. So I went outside, got my phone out, and put it on the voice memo app, or whatever you call it, and just hummed it. You sort of doodled it into my phone to remember it. And when I got home, I figured out what the notes were on the guitar, and what you heard is actually, it's my demo that I made that day, except I fixed it up a little bit to make it sound better. So there you go. It needs a middle 8 though, so anybody want to provide me with a middle 8 to that song, just send it along. Send it to bw@hardcorezen.info, and we'll take a listen, and maybe it'll become part of the song. So 2 weeks ago, or sometime in the recent past, I got an email from somebody who wanted to ask me about a Dogen essay in Shobogenzo called The Moon, or Tsuki. And not Tsuki twice, just Tsuki once. And it had been a long time since I read that particular passage. It's not one of Dogen's greatest hits. You know, like I'm a big fan of The Who, and I once saw an interview where Pete Townsend lamented that, yeah, The Who get played on classic rock stations all the time, but it's only 3 songs. So it's like their entire career has been condensed into 3 songs. Won't Get Fooled Again, Baba O'Reilly, and what was the other one? Maybe I can't explain. I forget what the third one was. And they've got a whole bunch of other songs. So in terms of Dogen, this is not one of the 3 songs they play on classic radio type level, but it's like one of the deep cuts of Dogen. And it appears in several pieces of Dogen translation. The most popular one it appears in is Moon in a Dewdrop, edited by Kazuaki Tanahashi. This is the most likely place most people have encountered it, including the person who wrote to me. It has a different cover now. This is the old-timey cover that I got, but when you get it now, it has a different cover. It also appears in Book 1 of the Kosen Nishiyama John Stevens translation of Shobogenzo. If you can find one of these, congratulations. They're really hard to find these days. I spent $100 on getting a set of the 4 volumes a few years ago, because that's the best I could do. It also appears in Book 3 of my teacher Gudo Wafu Nishijima and his student Mike Cross's translation of Shobogenzo. That's easy to find. You can just go on Amazon, and there it is. And it also appears in the Hubert Neerman Shasta Abbey version of Shobogenzo. You can't really find the printed version. Somebody at Shasta Abbey was kind enough to send me this, but you can get it for free online. And recently, somebody commented in the comments, I talked about something about Dogen, and somebody said, well, that just proves the uselessness of Dogen. And I just commented back, yeah, sure, fine, whatever, because I'd spent hours and hours working on that video, and if all you can get out of it is that proves the uselessness of Dogen, then there's no conversation to be had. But this particular essay would probably be prime fodder for somebody who has the idea that Dogen is just useless, because it really shows his propensity for putting things in flowery language and talking in metaphors that are difficult for most people who haven't studied Buddhism in depth, the literature and stuff, to understand. It's really tough going. But I'd like to comment a little bit about it, because I'm thinking of talking about this when I get to France. Okay, so when I get to one of the gigs, and I'll mention these later in the video, one of the gigs I'm doing in September is I'm speaking at a Gudoji, a temple named after my teacher, by one of his students, Jean-Marc Bazzi, I think is how we pronounce his name. And I knew Jean-Marc a little bit when we were both in Japan studying with Nishijima Roshi, but this will be the first time I'll see him since the 1990s, I guess. But anyhow, they seem to be Dogen scholars, and I thought they might enjoy hearing about this essay, Tsuki, by Dogen. But what I'm realizing as I work with it is tough going. The easy part of it is it's only about 3 or 4 pages, depending on whose translation you look at. But the hard part is it's all full of metaphors and weirdness. So let me just read you the first line from the Nishijima Cross version, and it'll give you a pretty good idea. The round realization of moons is not only 3 and 3 before, and not only 3 and 3 after. The state in which moons are round realization is not only 3 and 3 before, and not only 3 and 3 after. Those are two different sentences. Yeah. And they're kind of the same, and you're just going, well, if you're me, you're just looking at this going, 3 and 3 before and 3 and 3 after? What the hell are you talking? And why are you talking about the moon? And what the hell is all this moon stuff? I think when I first encountered this essay, it would have probably been when I decided to read Shobogenzo for myself. And I would have come across all kinds of things. I was commuting an hour by train each way to go to Tsuburaya Productions from my home at the time. So I was on the Odakyu train line from, I can't remember, from Shinjuku or Nishi Shinjuku? Or some Shinjuku station, one of the Shinjuku stations, out to, where did we go? No, what the hell was the name of the station? God, I had to go, Soshigaya Gakuen, I think. Anyway, Soshigaya Gakuen Maya, I think was the name of the station. Anyway, no, that's not right. Oh, fudge. I don't remember the name of the station. That bothers me. Anyway, so I'd be reading these things just going, what the hell? But my policy at the time was I was just going to read it from start to finish, Shobogenzo from start to finish. Whether I understood it or not, I didn't care. My point was to get every word, filtered through my brain. Just read the words and just get through it. Anyway, lucky for me, I was reading the Nishijima Cross version because there's copious footnotes, and that 3 and 3 before and 3 and 3 after, he says, suggests random concrete facts as opposed to general abstractions. And it comes from a koan, I don't know if this is really a koan, it's just a story of some master saying to another master, how big is the sangha that you practice with? And the guy says, in some cases 300, in some cases 500. And then he gets asked, how is the Buddha Dharma dwelt and maintained? And he says, the common and sacred live together, and dragons and snakes mix in confusion. I don't know what that means, you tell me. And the other guy says, how big is the sangha? Now, he already said how many are in the sangha, and then he says, how big is the sangha? And dude answers, 3 and 3 before and 3 and 3 after. It just kind of means everyone in the sangha is part of the sangha, and so you could talk about them in terms of numbers, but each one is just an individual concrete person, so the numbers kind of don't matter. That's the basic interpretation I get out of that, and it is what it is. He's just talking poetically. Now, the intro that Nishijima Roshi wrote, or Nishijima and Cross wrote, goes like this. Tsuki means the moon. In this chapter, Master Dogen uses the moon as a symbol to explain the relationship between an abstract concept and a concrete reality. The moon existed yesterday, it exists today, and it will exist tomorrow. We can say that at one moment in time, the moon is a unique and independent entity. At the same time, there is the abstract concept, the moon, in quotes. The concept of the moon is an abstraction of the concrete moon which exists at one moment, that is, the moon yesterday, the moon today, the moon tomorrow. Although the unique concrete moon is the origin of the abstract concept, the moon, we are prone to discuss philosophical problems only in terms of abstract concepts, forgetting concrete facts and creating a division between thinking and perception. They must be cleaning the streets the other block away. I hope that isn't too distracting for you. Buddhist philosophy synthesizes the two factors, and here Master Dogen explains the mutual relationship between thinking and sensory perception, comparing the abstract concept, the moon, with, as in quotes, with the concrete moon. Secondly, Master Dogen uses the relationship between moon and cloud to explain the relationship between subject and object. Buddhist theory says that reality is oneness between subject and object here and now. Master Dogen explains this using the example of the moon and a cloud that surrounds the moon. And the intro by Hubert Neerman is also kind of interesting, so I'll read you that. Although the Chinese characters that Dogen employs for the title of this discourse may be translated as one's excellent nature, I didn't actually look into that, but I'm going to just take his word for it. This term does not occur in the text itself. Rather, Dogen appears to have used it to spell out with Chinese characters the Japanese word tsuki, the moon, which is a common Buddhist metaphor for one's innate Buddha nature, the moon of our original nature. And Dogen liked to give his chapter titles, his essay titles, to characters. And you could, if you wrote Tsuki, the moon, in Japanese, normally it would just be one character. So that might have been why he chose to change it. And at the same time, one's excellent nature is synonymous with one's innate Buddha nature. Some readers may find this discourse less obscure if they substitute the words Buddha nature for the word moon. And that's Professor Neerman's opinion, and I don't see any reason to argue with it, but I notice that Nishijima Roshi doesn't seem to share the same opinion, or doesn't seem to want to emphasize that if he does. But they kind of have a similar interpretation. And I'd have to say that if you want a readable version of this essay, the one to look at is the Hubert Neerman translation. Much as I think highly of the Nishijima cross translations, his translation is really accurate, but it's a bear to read. And this one is easier. And while we're on that subject, the one in the Nishiyama Stevens translation is really interpretive, to the point where it's hard. I was sort of wondering whether I was reading the same essay or not, but there were enough commonalities to be like, okay, this is a translation of the same material, but it's really different, because the other three translations, the Hubert Neerman one and these two, are fairly similar. And this translation, to me, it seems to be trying really hard to preserve the poetry of Dogen, and not trying too hard to convey the meaning behind it, which arguably, I think probably, I don't know what sort of audience they were going for. But this is the one to read if you just want to sound beautiful and obscure and make no sense at all and sound very Zen masterly. You can read this to your friends and be like, you know. You can go, thusness of thus is the moon in water. Is the moon in water? That's what it says. It is water thusness, moon thusness, thusness within thusness. Thus does not mean something like, thus means as it is. That's not a bad translation, but it's trying so hard to preserve the poetry and cadence of the thing that you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Whereas the Neerman version kind of throws away the poetry and then gives you basically what Professor Neerman thinks the essay is about. I don't know, there's not enough time, even though this is a short essay, there's not enough time in one of these videos to try to tell you all what's in the essay. This is kind of just going to be my impression of it. Dogen is trying to tell us about the relationship between subject and object, and using the moon as a metaphor for realization and for both the idea of the concrete moon that's in the sky and the abstraction moon that's in our mind, and trying to get us to look at things in a wider way. He does also talk a lot about emptiness in this, and how the moon is the sky. He uses a character set that means empty sky a lot in this essay to talk about what we truly are. And it kind of reminded me in some way of that book that came out that I have, but I haven't read yet, called A Universe from Nothing. I didn't read the book, but I read a couple summaries and watched videos by the guy who wrote it. And the idea is a kind of a scientific theory that the somethingness we see around us in the universe is really just all a manifestation of eternal emptiness. You know, it sounds very Buddhist, but it's supported by mathematics and research and stuff. And it's kind of an interesting concept, although I found the book difficult going, which is why I ended up watching the synopses on YouTube and stuff. So that's kind of the deal with this essay. Maybe I'll do a future video if people ask for it in the comments, talking about the specifics of what's in the essay. It's an interesting essay, but as I said earlier, it's one of Dogen's most difficult essays because of all the poetry and metaphor and references to old obscure stories that most of us, myself included, don't know. I've been studying Buddhism for close to 40 years, as I keep mentioning on this video channel, and I still miss a lot of these metaphors and stuff, so good luck to somebody who hasn't read all that stuff that I've read. I miss them because my memory is garbage, but you know, somebody with a better memory might pick up on them if they've read them once. Anyway, that's what I say about Dogen's essay, The Moon. I know it wasn't much, but, you know, this is what you get. You're not paying for this. We'll talk about that in a minute. But before I talk about that, I'm going to Europe, and you are seeing the dates on the screen. I'll be in Finland, Germany, not the Netherlands this time, but Belgium, which is close, and France and England, and those are the dates on the screen. And if you want to get clickable links to find out how you can join these events, you can go to the URL you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/events. There I have clickable links. Some people are asking if I'm doing any events in the USA. Here's my deal with doing events in the USA. I will do events in the USA, but only at places where anybody who wants to can join. As long as American Zen centers remain segregated, I'm not going to speak at any of those segregated Zen centers. Sorry, not going to do it. But if you have a Zen center and you're not segregated, ask me and I'll come there and I'll speak there. And finally, here's the deal with sending me money. You can send me money to cover for the fact that I'm not speaking at Zen centers in America. You can go to the URL you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. As I always say, that is my main means of support. I'm going to get paid for a lot of the events. I think most of the events that I'm doing in Europe, but it won't be enough to cover my living expenses. And your donations are what I really live on, and I appreciate your support, so thank you. But as always, this is offered for free, so you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. Take a look at the moon tonight. See you later. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey Ziggy, how you doing? Too hot for you out here in the sun with me, huh? You want to sit in the shade? All right, we'll go back inside where it's cool. Are you looking for bugs? He's always looking for bugs. He likes to bite at bugs, but he never catches them. All right, Ziggy. I'll talk to you later.